So to begin with, here we've got a plant, and the plant, as we know here, this is the producer, and the producer is very important because what it's doing is it's actually trapping the light energy using photosynthesis and converting the light energy into sugars. Now, the problem is this. The light energy, when it hits the plant, whether or not it's the grass or it's the leaves, here this is a Y10 plant, actually there is only a success rate of 1%. 1% of this available light energy is used by the plants. The rest of it is lost. So 99% of that light energy is lost from the food chain before you actually start. So how is this energy lost? Well, one of the main ways is quite simply reflection. The rays of light, the wavelengths of light that cannot be absorbed by the chlorophyll are reflected. So that's why the leaves on the whole look green, because green wavelength is reflected. The other thing is you have transmission. So transmission of light through the leaves, going straight through and not being absorbed by the chlorophyll. And so the little bit that you do get, though, the 1%, is used to produce sugar. So what you've done is you've converted light energy from the sun, ultimately up here, into the sugar, which is therefore going to be housing chemical energy. And this material is used to produce new tissues. We call the new tissues biomass. And of course, this is what herbivores eat. So the herbivores come along and they nibble at the leaves of the plants, and they get their energy from that source. So the herbivores are eating the producers, and so our herbivores are the next level in the food chain, and these are our primary consumers. And don't forget that this sugar that's been manufactured by photosynthesis, some of that actually has to be used for respiration of the plant. So the plant is using up some of that sugar, some of that chemical energy for its own respiration. So even though we've got a loss here, we've got 99% loss, only 1% actually captured. Some of that captured energy has to be used to keep the plant alive, respiration. So even though it's made the sugar by photosynthesis, it still can't use all of it to make the new tissues. So here we've got a landscape. We've got the sun there, we've got the energy from the sun shining down onto all that greenery, and that energy hits the ground and will allow those producers to carry out photosynthesis, create the new tissues, and the biomass then has enough energy within it to be the food source for the next level, which is the herbivore. And here's our herbivore. Now, our rabbit will eat the grass, it will take it in, and it will lose it in two ways. It will lose it by respiration, so there will be losses. It's a mammal, so it loses a lot of heat as well, and then it will produce feces and urine. The rabbit will be eaten by the fox, which will also respire and will also produce feces and urine. But there will also be losses between the rabbit and the fox, because the fox will not necessarily eat all the parts of the rabbit. It may not eat the fur, for example, so that's a loss. Then we have the hound. The hound eats the fox. The hound also respires. The hound also produces urine and feces. And there will also be bits of the fox, say the bones and the teeth perhaps, that the hound doesn't eat. And so there are losses, all these arrows pointing away from our food chain are losses. So one loss is respiration. Another is energy lost in egestion, that's feces, and excretion, that's urine. Energy lost in material that isn't eaten by the rabbit, doesn't necessarily eat the prickly bits. The fox doesn't necessarily eat the fur, but he also respires, and he also produces feces and urine. And then the hound too. The hound will have bits of the fox it won't eat. So there will be energy lost. There'll be respiration of the hound. There will also be energy lost in egestion and excretion. So all the way along this food chain, you have got energy losses at every point. So one of the things you've got to be able to do is to work out the efficiency of energy transfer. So our cow here has eaten 100 kilojoules of energy. And looking up here, you can see 40 kilojoules have been used up in respiration and movement, 35 in urine, 15 in methane, leaving only 10 kilojoules there in blue for growth, so making new tissues. So 10 out of the total amount taken in, 100, multiplied by 100, gives you 10%. That is our efficiency recording. So efficiency is the energy used for growth, so the output, divided by the energy supplied, multiplied by 100. Okay, so sometimes you have to work it out in a slightly different way. So this sheep has eaten 200 kilojoules, so that's the input, 200, so that goes at the bottom. Used up 66 kilojoules in respiration, 126 in feces, urine and methane gas. So 126 plus 66 gives you 192. 200 to start with, therefore, if we've lost 192, that means there is only 8 kilojoules available to make new biomass, so to make our new tissues. So once we've worked out what X stands for, so X is up here, we know that's 8, so we divide 8 by 200, multiply by 100, and that gives us the answer of 4%. So 4% energy efficiency, or efficiency of energy transfer. So here's my summary diagram. We've got the sun up here shining onto the plants. Remember that only a very small proportion is used by the plant, can be actually trapped and used to produce biomass. A lot of it is lost in reflection. Energy is passed on to the rabbit when the rabbit eats the plant, but not all of the energy is passed on because the rabbit doesn't eat all the parts of the plant. And the fox then eating the rabbit, not eating all parts of the rabbit, and both the rabbit and the fox, of course, remember, losing energy by movement, heat loss, suggestion of waste, and not eating all the rabbit. And so finally you end up with not very much energy available to pass on to the next trophic level. And that's why food chains are of limited length. Now, you may have noticed over here I've got a bucket. You may be wondering what the bucket's there for. Well, it's my analogy. If you think of the bucket full of water is the sunlight. It's the maximum amount of energy that's available. But my bucket's got holes in it and it's losing water. And as the bucket moves from trophic level to trophic level to trophic level, because of the leakage, there's less water left. Until at the end, you've got hardly any water in your bucket, certainly not enough to support another trophic level. So the last thing to remember is that herbivores eat all the time. They literally never stop. And they are doing this because they need to convert lots and lots of that plant material into their biomass. Carnivores eat less often because the meat is easier to digest and it's got more kilojoules in it. And the final thing, don't forget that animals not only use lots of glucose for respiration, for movement, but if they're warm-blooded, they need to use the energy to maintain a constant body temperature. And I hope that was helpful.